he was issued a $250 citation by the Philadelphia police officer. Now, later in the day, you will certainly see some skateboarders there, because skateboarders who are under the age of 91 are far more difficult to catch than old and slow and vacant ones. Stop 7 is going to be right at this corner here, and stop 7 is for the Cathedral Basilica of St. Peter and Paul. Do we have anybody else getting off at stop number 7 today? Okay.
Still rolling. If you look closely, you can see the shield over there.
Oh, okay. Steve, good save. Thank you. Do you enjoy the tour of the broken arm? But like I said, faithful tour guide. I'll rock it out. Now, thank you, sir. A little shook up now, but I'll be okay. Now, over to your right, that is the Cathedral Basilica of St. Peter and Paul. Now, if you look closely at that building, there is actually no stained glass windows at eye level. Those stained glass windows are actually located very high up on that building, very near to the roof. And the reason for that is, back in the 1840s, there was a political party known as the Nativists, who were certainly not fans of Irish Catholic immigrants, because they believed that they were coming over to the United States as a result of the potato famine to take American jobs. So what the Nativists would do, because of Gangs of New York, if anybody saw Gangs of New York, you will certainly remember the Nativists. So they would throw bricks through the windows and try to drive the Irish out that way. Now, the builders of that church were exceptionally intelligent, because what they did was locate the windows very high up, making it incredibly difficult to heave a brick through. So you practically have to be Donovan McNabb to throw a brick through one of those windows. Now, if you look over to your left, folks, this area here where you see the fountain is actually called Logan Square. Now, up until the 1830s, that was where the public executions of the city of Philadelphia took place, because right where those fountains were, that was where the gallows would have been located. Now, off to your right, folks, as I said before, I'm a huge nerd for English literature. That is the Philadelphia Free Library, and I pointed out because they have a very exquisite rare books collection, and as part of that rare books collection, you can actually see a raven that belonged to Charles Dickens. Now, it was actually surprisingly quite common in the early 1800s for people to carry around pet ravens with them. Now, when Charles Dickens came to the city of Philadelphia, his pet raven died, but he left it as a gift to the city, which he then stuffed and put on display. Now, that raven is significant because it was believed to be the source of inspiration for one of Edgar Allan Poe's famous novels, which of course was, sir, The Raven. Excellent. 2 stars for the day. 1 for saving me. 1 for answering the question right. Now, here we go, folks. This is stop number 8 for the Rodin Museum, which houses the largest collection of Rodin sculptures anywhere in the world outside of Paris. Anybody getting off at the Rodin Museum today? All right, Janetta. Now, okay. Now, if you take a look at those massive columns that mark the entranceway to the Rodin Museum there, it's almost impossible to see from this angle, but just beyond those 2 columns are these immense bronze doors. Now, cast into those bronze doors is one artist's depiction of Dante's Inferno. So those doors are rightly called the Gates of Hell. Now, in yet another bit of Philadelphia irony, or more likely Philadelphia ignorance, a lot of newlyweds decide to have their wedding photos taken in front of the Gates of Hell doors. Now, whether it's irony or ignorance, I say that it's not a healthy start to a long and fruitful marriage, but people do Now, folks, coming up on your left, actually, this beautiful brownstone mansion right here is called the Bergdahl Mansion. And if anybody's a fan of the movie The Sixth Sense, M. Night Shyamalan's famous movie, the birthday party scene was actually filmed right inside of that building. Now, M. Night Shyamalan used this entire neighborhood, actually, called Fairmount, for the movie of The Sixth Sense. And he was actually a Philadelphia native and decided to film all of his movies in the city of Philadelphia. Movies like Signs and Unbreakable, and the movie The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. Signs was actually filmed just outside the city of Philadelphia in an area called Bucks County. Now, straight ahead of us, folks, is the Eastern State Penitentiary, which was an operating facility between the years of 1829 and 1988. Now, today, the Eastern State Penitentiary is open for tours, and it is a self-guided tour, unless they have a special on the inside, which sometimes they do. So the way that this tour works is, I think it's $11 to get in, and then you get an earpiece, and you put that in your ear, and you walk yourself through the prison. Now, this is an incredibly scary facility, but if you do have a bit of a dark side, I highly recommend this museum to you. The one caveat of this building is children under 7 are not permitted in. So if you were planning on seeing it, make arrangements for those. It's worse than jail. It's way worse than jail. Oh boy. Okay. All clear to that.
It's as much passive that it's on it.
Okay, folks. So that was the Eastern State Penitentiary back there. Now, here's something that children may be able to relate to. The basic idea of Eastern State Penitentiary was kind of like timeout. The idea of rehabilitation was to house everybody in solitary confinement so they could think about their wrongdoings. Now, imagine a timeout lasting about a life sentence, being in solitary confinement. And that is enough to drive any reasonable person insane. And that's exactly what happened inside of those walls. And for that reason, the Eastern State Penitentiary is believed to be in the top 10 most haunted places in the United States. Now, personally, folks, I don't really go for any of the haunted ghosts and spirit stuff myself. But what I can tell you is that if you visit that building, it's incredibly scary on its own without having any ghosts on it, particularly as you're learning about the things that went on inside of that building. The reason why they don't allow children in there is because there may be some lead paint particles, and they're worried about people, especially kids, touching it and then putting stuff in their mouth. They just don't want to have that. Okay, so there were actually some very notorious criminals that were housed in the Eastern State Penitentiary for a very long time. The notorious gangster Al Capone actually did a 1-year stay inside the Eastern State Pen. The story goes that in the late 1920s, early 1930s, there was a hit out for Al Capone in the streets of Chicago. And he theorized, probably correctly, that he was safer behind bars than he was on the street. So Al Capone hopped a train to Philadelphia, got off at 30th Street Station where he showed a police officer his gun and was promptly arrested. Now, before you think that's an incredibly strange idea, Al Capone had an incredible amount of money and was able to bribe just about everybody in the prison. So he lived a lavish lifestyle in there. Inside his cell, he had Persian rugs. He had a mistress that was allowed to visit once a week. He had a private chef that cooked his meals 3 times a day. And he was even allowed outside of the prison walls once a week to get a haircut and a hot shave. While literally people were going crazy around him. He was living like the Four Seasons Hotel. Now, folks, if you look over to your left, this is the Philadelphia Art Museum, which was designed by the first African-American graduate of the University of Pennsylvania's School of Architecture, Julian Francis Abel. Now, believe me when I tell you, folks, this is a world-class art museum. Has paintings dating all the way back to the time of the Renaissance. There is a few Salvador Dali paintings here, and even a few Vincent van Gogh paintings. So no matter what taste of art you're into, if you are into it, check out this museum. Now, so do we have